excited that you guys decided to join me again for another conversation. And this conversation, you guys, is extremely special to me. It has been probably 5 years in the making, and we went from zero to a million. And I am literally, my heart is bursting right now because I get to introduce somebody who not only I love, admire, and respect, but I get to introduce somebody that embodies everything that I say. When I say that we are the creators of our own destiny, that we are the wizard, everything that you guys will be reading in the book, when I say all that, who you're going to meet today embodies all of that. So I would like you to meet some of you for the first time, others of you, it's a reintroduction, a reacquaintance, but author, marriage and family therapist, business owner, international speaker, and the developer of what is going to take this country and the world by storm, a technique and a wonderful way of dealing with hypersensitive people, not just children. The the designer, the creator of the Lafaya Way, and she might not want me to say this, but I am anyway. The poker queen. The poker queen, my friend, my sister, Lafaya Mitchell. I am just so happy to have you here. It took us a while to get here, but we are here, and I just can't even get, bring it down. Whew, 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 bring it down. So
Yes, it's
excited.
quite a journey.
It really, really has. And so, I'm just excited because what we do, guys, and you guys don't know this because you haven't really had an opportunity to see it, is we vibe on such a high level. We we not only vibe, we create, we pray, we manifest, we check each other. I mean, when I say check, it's hard checks, like chin checks. But we do it all in love and we do it all with a true purpose. And some of you that I am so fortunate to grace your screen and your audio know that one conversation can change your life. And I'm believing that something that we say today may be the thing that helps you see things just a little clearer, or maybe gives you a different elevated view of whatever it is, because we know that we're in hard times right now with COVID. But I'm telling you, COVID could be the thing that changes your whole perspective and gives you the ability to just shoot forward to whatever it is that you want. So, where do you want to begin, sis? I mean, do you want to start with your books? Because I have these three masterful books that she has produced that are here. And, it's very, very funny. I told her I'm not going to tell her until we're on camera. But I have given this book out because this was the first one. It had a different title. And I do this. Boop. Do you see where this is? This is like in the middle of the book. And then I go to the front and I look for the table of contents. Today, you guys, I've had this book for almost 3 years. This particular one for not three because we reprinted it. But I looked in the dedication section and you can't see it, but I'm in this book. I didn't even know until today. I can't, I'm so embarrassed. And
I
then
told you were in the book.
yes, you told me, but I mean, telling and seeing are two different things. And then while I was doing some research, because you guys, I mean, I wish I could tell you how we have traversed this course because I'm doing some other research and I see a Medium post of when we went out to go to Snoop's thing. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
when did this happen? I mean, we were talking every day, you guys, and I didn't know she was doing this. So I think where I want to start, Faye, is with first and foremost, just a little bit of the journey, that the journey is not going to be easy. Um, the journey is not going to be hard. The journey is just going to be your journey. And I think I want to frame this in, I wrote down the 4 P's. So I'm going to share them with you and then let's kind of talk around them. But passion, because Lafaya is so passionate about what she wants to accomplish, not only with the people that she serves, but also in her life. The second is preparation. I remember the many, many nights of her writing everything out. Then persistence, because we've talked about some highs and some crash and burn
Man.
lows. And then positioning, because right now she is in position to take over a space that, whoa. So you want to take them in order or you want to rock and roll them, just have conversation? Because I'm gonna shut up because they need to hear from you. They need to hear from the
Oh,
poker queen.
uh-oh. So we have to have a fifth P in there now. But no, I think take them in order. Let's go one at a time. So you 4 P's, you said passion. And of
Yes.
course, you know that I have a strong passion for what it is that I do. People, I've been asked the question so many times, like, how'd you get started in this? What helped you to know that this is what you want to do? And I tell people all the time that I was born to do this. Like, it's crazy. It's great. And it's crazy how that kind of came back around to me to kind of smack me too, because I'm like, oh, kind of getting out there promoting, doing all this marketing stuff that I don't like that part. I like the clinical part,
Mhm.
and I'm out there doing all that. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm doing video after video, recordings, podcasts. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to put on makeup today. I just want to go to sleep, right?
Right,
And
right.
then I remember I'm walking up the steps of my house and I'm so tired at the bottom of the steps. By the time I get to the top of the steps, it was like, you were made for this, girl. You were born for this. So it started out with, and I didn't know this before until I really started developing the Lafaya Way philosophy. I didn't truly understand that my whole life really brought me around to this point right here, right now,
Mhm.
because I was a hypersensitive child. I grew up in a circumstance that set me up for that intergenerational trauma that not many people get a chance to hear about.
Mhm.
But basically, it's that experience that we have from generation to generation when we've grown up in environments that are challenged. So
Okay.
socioeconomically, just a lot of different challenges. So gang violence, all the challenges that you can think of in a space that's really, as far as finances are concerned, is challenge. There are challenges
Yes.
in all kinds of ways. But I myself had grown up and I didn't know it at the time, but I was suffering from intergenerational trauma. And now fast forward to the later points of my life, teen mom, following along with all the, what it would seem like would be all the things that everybody goes through where I come
Mhm.
from, right?
Mhm.
And I found myself thinking, there is no freaking way that I'm gonna allow my baby to grow up like I did. I had this little beautiful life in my hands, and I was like, he will never experience what I've experienced in this life. And I meant that. And so I
Mhm.
started trying to figure it out. Like, nobody in my family went to college, but I found out like everything was a hustle for me because that's all I understood, when I was younger. So I figured out that, hey, you go to school, you can get paid financial aid for going to school, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
hey, financial aid sounded like a lot of money back then. And
Right.
so I'm like, hey, let's get that financial aid. And then I found out you can get more financial aid if you get the good grades. And I'm competitive too. So I was like, oh yeah, nobody here is smarter than I am. So I know I can get these A's, right? Especially if I can get some more financial aid, right?
Right,
And
right.
and then I started doing all these little things. But in the process of that, I started to learn about what I really wanted to do in life. So initially I thought, okay, I'll be a nurse. That was pretty much where I come from. People thought that was like top of the line kind of work right there, being a nurse. You make some real money.
Mhm. Mhm.
and and then in the process of going to school, I learned when you're a nurse, you have to deal with things like bodily
But
fluids and stuff. And Lafaya is not, she doesn't like any bodily fluid. Like, there's not one you can mention that I like. And
right.
so I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not my thing. And so then I took a psychology 101 class. I remember this. And during the psych class, I thought, I love this stuff. I'm gonna take another one of these. I was just taking my general education stuff. So then I took a few more and I was like, oh yeah, I want to switch over to what's the major in this area, right? I was in
Mm-hmm.
junior college. What's the major in this thing here? Right. And they were like social sciences at the junior colleges. So like I want to do that. And then it was like, okay, next step. Now I'm done with all the 2 or 3 years that I spent because I switched majors, 3 years that I spent in junior college. So then I'm like moving over. Okay, psychology is definitely my thing. And anyway, long story short, as I learned all things that I learned, I knew for sure that I wanted to work in psychology for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
then all my jobs, and I feel like it's a complete and total God thing because I've never done anything other than counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So even before I really knew that I was switching majors, when I was 18 years old, I was working in a residential home for developmentally disabled adult male sex offenders and aggressive adult
Whoa.
males, right? And so it was an interesting, I'm 18, my little tiny little 120-pound 18-year-old self in this facility with all these men that could be potentially dangerous, but
Yeah.
I'm having good results with them just because of how I function. So I
Mm-hmm.
function in a way where if somebody has a challenge, then I'm really kind of respectful of what their challenges are. Like there's not a judgment there. There's just a, hey, look, you're human, I'm human, let's figure this out. Like I understand that you have a challenge here, but we need to get around it this way. So I've always kind of been like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't realize that non-judgmental, right? Like that treating other people like with some people always use the word respect and they misuse the word respect so much that I have a tough time with it.
Mm-hmm.
But giving people their due respect just for being a fellow human being, whether they've made mistakes or not,
We're not.
whether they're a small person or not, give them
Mm-hmm.
their due respect as another human being, treat them how we would want to be treated, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
The
so
golden rule.
right. And then my next job, it naturally kind of flowed into working for severely emotionally disturbed kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was interesting work for me. So I'm 20 years old, back here working with these little teenagers from 10, well, tweens to,
Tweens.
teens,
Yeah.
but about 10 to 18-year olds who had severe, like, behavioral, emotional, social issues, so much so that they couldn't stay in a standard foster home. They had to stay in the children's home.
Special. Right.
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 And so I'm back here working with these kids and getting all these great results, right? Like nobody understood, the rest of the employees did not understand how I got the kids to behave so well, who were
Mm-hmm.
so misbehaved when I wasn't there. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know anything special about what I'm doing. I just have sense, right? That's what I've always said. I've been saying that forever. I just have sense. I understand how to treat
Right.
people, and I'm not going to treat people like they're terrible people. I'm just never
Right.
going to do it, right? And so I just thought I just have a lot of love for so that's why they love me because I love them, right?
Right.
But
Right.
then I'm growing it. But each of my experiences have gone into, I ended up working with moms. This was so interesting. I ended up working with moms who were deemed like at risk of abuse
Yes.
and neglect.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into that work, that really started to like hone in on my skills
Mm-hmm.
because I'm working now in an area that I was one of those moms. I was a teen mom. I had a kid when I was
Mm-hmm.
way too young. I had like 4 of the 5 risk factors for the
Mm-hmm.
program
Mm-hmm.
just starting out for me a few years ago. So I'm 20 now, but I'm 20 with a 3-year-old, right?
Right. Right.
And so I'm a 20 with a 3-year-old in school, working full time and making sure that my little boy's not missing out on anything, right?
Anything. Right.
And so I'm teaching these moms, and I'm coming from a perspective of no excuses. Like there's nothing you could tell me that I probably ain't already been through or whatever, right? And so I started that work, and then things really start to kind of come to life for me because through that particular agency, they ended up pulling me, the company that trained the family support workers in that program,
Mm-hmm.
they pulled me up to be a trainer. So I got pulled up to be like a training coordinator when I was like 22 or some
Mm-hmm.
crazy young age.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in this building with all these like 40 plus women, and I'm the only like kid, and I look like I'm 12 when I'm
Yeah.
22. And so, but I'm coming in there getting like mad respect because of the feedback that I would give about how you work with families. Like I was a master engager of difficult to reach families where other workers would have some complications there getting some of the people engaged. I
Mm-hmm.
had no problem. I go in there getting results for all the families, right?
The thing, and I don't want to stop you because the thing that keeps dropping in to me is your gifts will make room for you. Your gifts
Yes.
will make room for you because the
Yes.
whole time you're just doing what you do. You're
Right.
just flowing. And all of a sudden, these doors are flying open. Each
Yeah.
door is flying open. And you said something that's so important because a lot of people, particularly now, oh my God, COVID. Oh my God, this. You said no excuses.
Yeah.
You
That's been my whole life.
no excuses.
Like COVID was actually like a propeller, like it propelled me forward. So it helped me to press into truly what it was I was supposed to be doing. Like
Be-
this has been an interesting year for me because I'm in love with this concept of, I'm like, the tougher it gets, hey, that's the thing that makes me feel like, oh, you want to challenge me? Let's go. Right. That's for me, it's like, oh, okay, so we putting on the gloves and we about to go now, right?
right,
So
right,
so
right,
okay, Kobe, you're not gonna stop me. So let's
right.
see what we can do, right? And so, but
That's the
but throughout,
competitor in you. That's the
right,
competitor in you. And
right,
see,
it's
listen,
crazy.
just so, because I have some young ladies that are in that 20 range that you're speaking to. And that hustle in you was the financial aid. When you figured out, hey, wait, hold up, this the game? Like, oh,
Right.
I could get some money for getting A's? Let's do that. That's the hustler. And so, you took how you were raised and you turned it to your advantage.
Yes.
And some people, they don't see how to turn that to their advantage. They see it as a
Yes.
deficit. You used it as, hey, this is material that I'm familiar with. Let's rock and roll. And
Yes.
that is why for you, COVID is nothing because
Mm-mm.
you've been prepared. Sometimes a friend of mine, he'll say, like, I say to him, and he'll say back, there are levels to this. And I say, you were built for this,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So you're displaying that right now. And that kind of leads us into the next P, which would be that P of preparation, because the game has already been set for you. So
Yes.
you just doing what you do. So keep going because the passion is there. If you guys
Okay.
can't
So
hear
yes.
her voice, the passion
So
is there.
okay, so I'm saying all this because I'm excited about the whole story. Y'all, I could talk about this all day, but bottom line is, man, I went from an agency, it was big agency doing training coordination. Then I went and I was servicing them as a counselor, as an actual therapist for the first time because I was finally, during all this time, I'm still going to school. So master's level counselor now. And then I'm looking at getting my hours to become, the marriage and family therapist. But while I'm going through those programs, I'm learning more and more, and I'm working with more and more challenged programs. I'm with Sutter Women's and Children's Program, and learning all these little things, and in each area, able to excel. Always being that master engager of those populations that are supposed to be so difficult to reach. And
Mm-hmm.
now at this time, of course, I have zero idea where that there would be a development of something called the Lafaya Way. First of all, I really never liked my name for one. It's always been kind of embarrassing to me. I'm like, well, man, where'd they come up with that stuff from, right? And so, but now I've actually really, really embraced this
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, beautiful name that I was given, and I'm using it because it works, and I'm using it because other people use it.
Mm-hmm.
So as I moved along and I worked in counseling, I went from the bigger agency to a smaller private. It was like for really severe clients. So it was now my brain is deciding to throw it out. Intensive outpatient, good gracious. So an intensive outpatient clinic. Now when I got there, that's when things really started to pick up. That's when I recognized that there was an area that I could work in where it was like a super specialty. So I was working with kids who were on the autism spectrum and severe, or those with moderate to severe, any moderate to severe social, emotional, or behavioral disorder. So I was working with kids who were suicidal with either severe depression or anxiety. I was working with your reactive attachment disorders. I had done some training with foster care agencies before, working with them to engage the kids and parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like everything was really starting to come together then, because at that point I had to reach deep to figure out how to create results with those who are on the spectrum,
Right.
because kids on the spectrum are very different. But they're different but not okay. So I can share the similarities, but there's some differences that if you don't acknowledge those differences, you're not going to be successful in working with them, period. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was good with each population. So when I went in and I didn't know much about autism at all, this is like my first real exposure to it, to being thrown into the work. And so I get the most severe, nonverbal, not unengaged, was not willing to engage, did not answer to his own mom calling his name, okay, kid.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And this is my first case. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this disorder. So I'm trying to study and research and let me find and what are the techniques they use and all this stuff. I get into reading, oh, this is about 20 years ago, or 15 to 20 years. But I started looking into all this research and they weren't telling me anything.
Mhm.
They were saying there's some things that you can do for babies to get them, to engage and all that, but nothing about this kid was 7 years old, about really working with the kid in a way that seemed like it would be productive. And
Mhm.
so I literally had to figure it out in the work. So I'm
Mm.
working with this kid. He's ignoring me, avoiding me at all costs and all this. And I'm trying to, if I try to talk to him, he's hiding from me. There's this little tunnel that he would get, this little blue tunnel. I talked about it in my book, The Lafaya Way, the first book,
The first
Fresh
one, yeah.
Approach. He would take this little blue tunnel and put it over his head. And every time I try to talk to him, it was like, nope. He put the whole tunnel over his head. And I'm like, this little kid. And then as soon as I'll stop talking, take the tunnel, throw it off, go play off on his own again. So I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this kid? Right. So I'm sitting in there and one day I'm frustrated. I'm like, I don't know what to do with you. Like, I'm just, that's kind of my personality. I don't know what to do with the kid. I don't know what they expect from me. Right. The experts don't even know what to do with the kid. Right. And so one day he put the tunnel on when I tried to talk to him. And I was like, you know what? Let me try to figure out what it's like in that tunnel for you, because you clearly it's enjoyable for you to get inside that tunnel, right? So I put the tunnel, when he throws the tunnel away like he does, when I stopped talking to him, I put the tunnel over my own head. And I was like, I see why you like it in here. I was like, it's closed in. You can't see me. I can't see you. Sounds are muffled. All you see is blue. I can see why you like it in here, right? I'm talking to myself inside the tunnel. And then I pull the tunnel down because, you can't just have a tunnel over your face while you're sucking your kid. And so I pull the tunnel down. And for the very first time, this kid is looking at me. Now, he is your classic, like, what people would put in, what you see in a dictionary if people were trying to define autism. He was like your classic autism, because a lot of people don't understand the spectrum of it, but he's like your classic. And so blunted affect, no real facial expression, no real verbal responses at all for him, and no expressiveness if he did try. And this kid was looking at me. I had both eyes for the first time, and I looked at him and I was like, what? And so I was like, oh, if I can't see you, you can't see me. And I pull the tunnel back up, right? And we start playing this weird game like peekaboo. And I watched in his eyes like this almost expression of a smile coming to his eyes, because again, he didn't do any facial expressions. Almost like the glint. And I was like, is that a smile in his eyes? I'm just talking to myself. And I'm like, okay, well, let's keep with this, right? After that, then this kid was engaged with me. Okay. So long story short, after 6 months of just slowly but surely allowing him to be who he is, taking an interest in what he seems to be taking an interest in, and allowing him to invite me in after I took in the interest, then all of a sudden, this kid, after 6 months, he was verbal. It was never that he couldn't speak. It was that he didn't have, first of all, I don't want to, it's tough because I don't want to say that they don't want to. I want to say that it's overwhelming for them to, because there's such a severe lack of understanding of their experience. They just push everything away. So they push everybody away, or they hop in fully and they're overwhelming. There's either one or the other, because there's just this overwhelm that happens for most kids that are on a spectrum. Now,
But
fast
wait,
forward to,
hold on, because, speaking about you, because that's the technique that kind of developed.
yes,
But you met this person, this young man, where he was,
yes,
and you stripped everything away, because when you put that tunnel over, you saw exactly what he saw. You literally put yourself in his place. And
yes,
your
yes,
persistence was that, you know, I throw my hands up. I don't know what I'm going to do, but you never left.
no,
You never left. You stayed right there. And I think that that's a huge point that we need to make, that even when things get difficult, the road that we're traveling gets kind of curvy. As long as you stay right there and meet it right head on, right where it is, you did not leave. You
Right.
just became at his level, is what I want to say. And when you came at his level from his experience,
Yes.
now he trusted you because you've been in the blue helmet. You were in there.
Right.
You
Right.
know what's going on. And that,
Right.
I think that's a fabulous thing because we always want to have relationships with people that get us,
Yes.
people who understand us. And
Yes.
so that I know is really, I'm going to keep holding these books up, you guys, because this is her work. And so keep going. But I just wanted to make it like
Now,
met the person right where they were.
I'm excited that you're able to pull that from what it is that I'm talking about, because that's what I speak to so much. And if I don't know if you got a chance to dig into the books yet, but when you read the books, it talks about those things, putting yourself in their shoes, truly in their shoes, not trying to act like you're putting yourself in their shoes, but you're still in your own shoes, with your own mind, your own way of thinking when
Mhm,
you're trying to understand them. No, you need to understand them from where they come from.
mhm,
And that's one of the like major things that I speak to. But another major piece, and now we're talking about the development of the Lafaya Way, is another major piece is to recognize one very key challenge that when people miss it, they end up not having success at all.
mhm,
And so it's really, really important to recognize. A lot of parents will say, oh man, they're extra sensitive, they're 0 to 60 anger, they can't handle this, they can't handle that, sounds bother them,
mhm,
finicky eaters,
mhm.
all these different sensory experiences, tags bother them, we have to tear off all the tags, they can only wear a sock on one foot, all these different challenges that parents are dealing with for those kids that I call hypersensitive.
Mhm.
Okay. So I get into hypersensitivity, and initially I was really working from that angle for kids who are on the autism spectrum and with Asperger's. But what I ended up learning as I started to share all of the information with people that maybe weren't on the spectrum, they're like, you realize that this works for everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
Like everybody gets hypersensitive sometimes, depending on the situation, the amount of stressor, their personality, their temperament type. A lot of people
Right
become,
now, Lafaya,
yes,
in
yes,
COVID,
yes, yes.
everybody's sensitivity level is so high.
Yes, there is worldwide hypersensitivity right now,
There you
right?
go.
And so there's a pandemic of hypersensitivity right now.
Going
And
on.
so and so as I was explaining that to people, people were like, well, what does hypersensitive mean? I kept using that word over and over again. What does it mean? What does it mean? I'm like, okay, does it mean they're hyper and sensitive? Like, do they have extra energy and they're sensitive? No. I said, well, yeah, kind of. There's
Kind
some
of.
in there too.
Right.
But by hypersensitive, I mean just those that are exactly as it sounds, overly sensitive to stimuli that people wouldn't assume that a person should be that sensitive about, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And sometimes it could be if you have a partner that you argue with a lot, right?
mhm.
You're going to be hyper vigilant. You're going to almost expect and be ready for a fight when they come. So they could say something like, hey, did you make dinner? It's like, what do you mean did I make dinner? Right?
Right, right, right,
Right?
right.
And so then you're getting into things like that. But when you're dealing with the kids, which is where I want to just for the sake of this conversation, mostly want to stick in that area. But when you're,
Actually, I don't want you to just stay there
oh,
because what
okay.
you just said right now transitions so well to why the numbers are high in divorce
Yeah,
right now.
oh
Because
yeah.
the example that you just gave, if you've been in confined environments, which was the little blue cap was confined environment. And now we're in COVID and we have been confined with people who we thought we liked, but we just tolerated. Come on, somebody.
Right.
And
No, and you
now,
had some space before.
right, because you got to go to work or you got to do this or that. And now you guys are on top of each other. And the example that you just gave when you said, hey, did you make dinner? And it's like, and that, right. What do you mean, did I make dinner? Oh my God. Did you make dinner? What? Right. But it's because we're living in this new elevated level. I mean, if you can't see it, it's because you don't want to see it,
Right.
but it's all around. So when I say I want you to move from the children to right now, it's because the techniques and the Lafaya Way works in all situations. And I say that because I've been around her while she was developing, and I've heard her use it on me. I mean, it's like, wait, what? Did you just Jedi mind trick me? What just happened? What's going on? And so I want you to make sure that we empower everyone,
Okay.
because we can stay with the children, and that's your pathway and that's how you got here, all the preparation that it took. But now you're in position, and that's the number 4 of the P. Now you're in position to make, oh my God, leaps and bounds and heal. And I say this purposefully, guys, we can heal the world with the Lafaya Way.
Mhm.
And everything that she has gone through to dig deep and find out, how do you meet people right where they are, and people who are very difficult to deal with. She shared with you that being 20 years old, she's in the midst of sexual predators. I mean, what in the world? Huh? What? That, as a female, is I don't know. It's not very comfortable. So,
No,
but that
and
was
you
your
know
job.
the most interesting thing about it is I was completely and totally comfortable in every
Mhm.
environment that I went into, because I understood, the one thing I did understand about myself is that I know how to connect with people on whatever level they need connection
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
And that's the big secret, okay, to world peace, to
Yeah.
people being able to get along with each other, is learning how to connect with one another. Because the biggest issue that we have in this world is lack of ability to connect. So
Yes.
even I would even venture to say that even the people who are out there, the people out there who are acting up the most, at some point in their lives, they were wounded. They
Uh,
were wounded by an inability to connect with others. People will say a lot of times, oh, they do all this and they make people hate them and they don't want to be liked and all this and that. But we all have an innate, we are born with this as human beings, innate desire to connect with others. This is why we are born needy. We are born needing to connect physically in all ways and dependent on others. That's
mhm.
why we're born that. We're born naked. We're born
Mhm.
fully exposed,
Mhm.
and we need connection. What's the first thing the doctors do? They place that baby on their mom's chest.
Mhm.
Why?
That
Because we're
heartbeat.
already starting that connection right then and there.
Mhm.
Actually, it begins in the womb. But once they're out of that womb, then we have to immediately connect them to someone, to some sort of connection. And I didn't mention this. I don't think I mentioned this in the books, but back a long time ago, any psych major, psych 101 student knows that there is a study that they did way back, for orphans, in a basically in a space where there weren't enough people to caretake for the
Mhm.
orphans. So they created like these robotic mothers who
Mhm.
would feed the kids, who would feed them milk and all that. Now, all the children who got any exposure to another human
Human.
being,
Yeah.
they survived
Yeah.
most of the time. But
Yeah.
all of the children who did not get exposure, any human exposure, would just literally turn over
And
and die.
die. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how deep our innate human
Connection.
desire to connect is. And
Absolutely.
when there is a disruption in that, then that is going to cause a disruption in a variety of areas: social, emotional, and behavioral,
Mhm.
top three. Okay.
So with that though, that this takes us even deeper,
Mhm.
because prior to us going into this pandemic, studies had come out saying that the millennials were saying that they were lonely.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, if you start out being lonely and now you're in COVID where you're not able to touch, you're not able to go out amongst people. So your energy is all within. I mean, it is going to be a major challenge to figure out how we regain those connections, how we relearn, and I have to say relearn how to interact with each other,
Mhm.
because we're what you just shared right now. You can't go hug someone freely, not right now. You can't turn to your neighbor at church and, shake their hand or any of that. And what you're communicating also with what you've developed go hand in hand. Again, I say for right now. And some of the things that I've been sharing with you, Lafaya, privately that I'll say here and now is, once we come out of COVID, for those of you that are in the employment space, you might want to reach out and bring her in and let her teach some things. Because when you bring your satellite people back into the space, there is going to be a lot of friction. There's going to be a lot of what I like to say reacquaintance. You're going to have to figure out, okay, do I really want to sit next to Susie? Because I know she got 15 people at her house and, you know, COVID, even though we have a vaccine. So we're going to have to relearn a lot of things. And based on the fact that you shared that you have the ability, the innate God given talent to connect with people that are sometimes difficult, your work right now in this season is for such a time as this. Because even if an HR director of Boeing calls you right now, to have all of those people come back into buildings, whether they be the CEO, the C suite, the directors, the managers, everyone having to re engage and come back together and then go out to satellites. Could you imagine? I
Mm,
mean, it's going to be a challenge.
it's
And
going to be
everything
tough.
that you're teaching in the Lafaya Way is going to help with that transition. Because realistically, guys, what she is teaching is not only better relationships, stronger relationships, but she's teaching us how to engage one another right where we are. Because everyone has a blue bucket over their head.
Mm-hmm,
Everybody.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And you guys know, it, one of the things that I have in my book is I talk about your representative. Who's your representative? Your representative is the little blue bucket. It's who you want the world to see. The young man put himself in the blue bucket because he wasn't ready to engage. Sometimes we put our best faces forward, and when we move out of COVID, our representatives are going to need some help. And Lafaya and the Lafaya Way are going to be able to support our representatives as well as who we are trying to get to in our authentic self. But Faye, what I really want you to talk about is your core four, because the core four are such dynamic. Well, mine are the core four. Yours are the, what is it? What is yours? We
Core
switched them
core.
around. Yeah, four core. Well, I'm
Yeah.
core four, you're four core. Sorry, guys, we're attached at the hip here. Sorry, but
I told her I was still in it. I
yeah,
told her
she did.
before
But
I
I
did
mean,
it.
I didn't
She's just
care.
being
She told
nice.
me she was
She's
still
being
in it. I
nice.
didn't care. But I just forgot. But I really, really want you to share that because that, um, I think that that is the antithesis of how we start the conversation. If
Yes,
we
yes.
engage each other when we move back into quote society with the core, with the four core in the back of our heads, I think we can have really good reentry. So go ahead and share that, please.
Agreed. Okay, so now I want people to learn how to think of the four core as like the ingredients to a cake. Okay, so if you use three of those ingredients and say you miss, say, like the salt or something like that, your cake may look good, but it's gonna taste nasty.
Right.
Right. So I want people, and sometimes if you miss a couple of ingredients, it's not even gonna look like a cake. Okay. So I want you to think of it in that way because that's the way I present them because they don't work apart. They work together. Again, if you do one at a time, you know, you can maybe get some semblance, but at the end of the day, you want to work all four. Okay. But
Yes.
the four core are number one, and this is especially important for being able to connect with other people in a positive way, especially when you're dealing with hypersensitive people or hypersensitive situations. So
Yes.
hypersensitivity, period. Okay. Find your calm. Okay. And not just finding your calm in that I'm going to speak very nicely and quietly,
Yeah.
professionally, and
Why are
and
you
say
teasing me?
and say, oh, I am not, and say all the things. If you personalize it, fix it. Okay, but no, and say all the things that I'm supposed to say in this situation, while on the inside, I am slowly dying or wanting to kill,
Mm-hmm.
right? And anxious and frustrated and all these things. When I say find your calm, I mean your entire calm, your internal peace.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you do not have that, then those who tend towards, sorry, and let me make sure I preface this first. All human beings tend toward emotion soaking, and I will define it. All human beings tend towards emotion soaking. Emotion soaking is the unintentional sponging of the negative energies of other people. Okay. And we all do it in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes one, sometimes 1,000, but in everything in between. And so, but when you're dealing with hypersensitive people and situations, you're going to have a greater degree of emotion soaking. It's nothing to become frustrated or upset about. It's something to acknowledge. So then that way you're not, if you're dealing with an emotion soaker, you're not personalizing their reactions first and foremost. But then for yourself, you're not being hard on yourself
Mm-hmm.
for being a bit sensitive in a situation. Okay, well, I do tend towards drawing in energy coming from other people. It has a lot to do with our potential for connection, but we don't recognize it that way. If you recognize it that way, then the emotion soaking dynamic won't be so terrible. We'll know how to deal with it. We'll know how to speak to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you don't know about it, so this has saved so many of the people I work with. They're like, just learning the emotion soaking piece alone has saved so many, it improves so many interactions that I have. So I'm able to say to an upset, child, and go back to the kid, but I'm able to say to an upset child, hey, you know what? I know that I might, I'm feeling a little bit frustrated. So if you feel that coming from me, then just, it's okay. I'm not trying, I don't want you to feel upset because I'm upset.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying that part alone will decrease their amount of reactivity to you as
I
they're
hate to
sponging
say
in your
this, but
emotional
my
reaction.
favorite one is the next one. So that right there, communicating to the child or to the person what your intent is, moves into the next one, which is my favorite.
Okay, so find your calm, your true Zen calm, not your fake calm. Number 2 is understand the real truth. So we need to understand the real reasons behind our own reactivity first, and others, the reactivity coming from others. When
Mm-hmm.
we understand the real truth, it helps us to find our calm, by the way, because then we're not personalizing. If you ask a child to clean their room, or something, these are my examples, but if you ask a child to clean their room, they're having this reaction like, oh my goodness, and blah, blah, all that. If you personalize that, then it's going to be like, well, after all I do for you, you can't just clean your room, instead of the truth, which is the kid doesn't like to clean.
Period. Period.
Point blanket, the real truth. So understand the real truth. And why are you triggered? So my real truth is, in the past, my parents never did anything for me. So since I try to give so many things to my kids, and I just expect that they should want to do everything that I ask them to. They should be just chomping at the bit to clean their room, to make up for how wonderful I've been since I had such terrible parents, right? Or maybe,
Or you
right?
guys,
Or
because she hit me with this hard when I was going through my divorce. It was performance for love for me. My real truth was performance for love. I wanted my kids to know that I was doing all this for them so that they would forgive me for leaving their dad. And realistically, they don't care. They out now. Hell, they ain't even here.
yeah, and I was very clear on the sharing that the easier time that you have with things like divorce, the easier time, there's that emotion soaking dynamic in there too, the easier time your kids are going to have with your divorce. If you're completely and totally traumatized on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
and you're crying, having a full flood of rainstorm in your body as you're
I
going
wasn't
through it,
doing that,
and
by
you're
the way.
and you're coming to your kids like, everything's okay. They're going to feel all that flood of rainstorm coming from inside of you. They're going to soak that in, and they're going to think that it's them that feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, so first of all, you do a lot better just being honest with how you feel, especially if you have a sensitive kid. But it's being honest with carefulness. Okay, not I'm crying on the inside. So just I know I've been feeling really upset inside. So maybe you're just attaching to some of that when you see you have an upset kid. But right, so find your calm. Understand the real truth, which gets so deep and thick with so many things that I
We're
don't
going
even
to
have
talk about
time.
that more. We're going to talk about that
Right?
more, seriously, because that's
I
my
love my
favorite
subjects.
one.
Yes, but if you guys want to get deeper into it, I seriously invite you. I recommend highly that you do purchase the Lafaya Way series, because seriously, this is not just me. I want you to understand this, because I could speak on these things for hours. But in the book, we're able to spend a little bit more time describing the steps. So, but anyway,
As
step two.
well, your website. I mean,
Yep.
your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
she does all kinds of videos, guys. And I know that we are still at number 2 and we have 2 more to go, but I want to make sure that you understand the information that she is sharing is so applicable. It's so applicable if you're having strife or stress in your personal relationship. And I say that because now we're intergenerational. You might have some issues that are unresolved with grandma and
Mm-hmm.
grandma at the house now. And
Right.
if you understand that you have a resource in Lafaya to go to, you can strip all that negativity out.